In the shadows of what is celebrated as progress, a lesser-told narrative lurks. Thousands of innocent men, women, and children were enrolled, often without their full knowledge or consent, in experiments driven by fear, ambition, and the machinery of state. When the very institutions charged with protecting us become the ones conducting hidden trials, trust erodes, and the cost of knowledge becomes human. In the United States during the mid-20th century, as the Cold War rattled the world and the arms race accelerated, the government and its agencies embarked on programs that tested not only weapons, but human bodies, minds, and souls. Take, for instance, the era when radiation, chemical, and biological agents were considered the frontier of defense. Departments of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the Department of Energy all conspired under layers of classification to expose Americans to risks hidden from public view. A 1994 government report documented hundreds of tests involving radiological, chemical, and biological materials, many of which were carried out without informed consent. As Energy.gov +3, Government Accountability Office, +3, Center for American Progress, +3 human beings became data points, their suffering often invisible. One striking example: domestic tests aimed at understanding the vulnerability of American cities to biological attack. More than 200 tests were staged on U.S. soil as part of a wartime and Cold War escalation of weapon research. PBS +1. The city you lived in, its crowded streets, its unsuspecting citizens, could become a laboratory. Yet the men and women walking those streets had no idea they were part of an experiment. The air we breathe, the ground we walk on, the skies overhead, all became quietly enlisted in research that would reshape definitions of ethical science. Then there were the psychological and mind control operations. The CIA's infamous programs explored drugs like LSD, hypnosis, isolation, and forced addiction, all in a quest to break the will, manipulate the mind, and investigate control. Wikipedia +1 subjects were drawn from veterans, psychiatric patients, prisoners, civilians, all vulnerable populations whose ability to refuse or even understand the true nature of the research was deeply compromised. When the ego of national security eclipsed the autonomy of the individual, the foundations of free will were eroded. Beyond the tests, a pattern emerges: race, poverty, and powerlessness. Many of the human experiments targeted Black Americans, institutionalized patients, prisoners, impoverished communities. The threat of injustice is unmistakable. The Tuskegee syphilis study, for instance, began in 1932 with the aim of observing untreated syphilis in Black men in Alabama. They were told they were receiving treatment, but the treatment was withheld even after a cure was discovered. McGill University. This is not an anomaly. It is part of a larger system that considered the lives of some less worthy of consent, less worthy of disclosure. When state secrecy shields science gone astray, the damage is twofold: physical harm to individuals and a poison of trust across society. In response to revelations of radiation experiments, ingestion of radioactive materials, and covert releases of bacteria, the federal government under Bill Clinton in 1994 established the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments to investigate these forgotten pasts, es.energy.gov. Furthermore, the president issued a memorandum directing that classified human research must include informed consent, disclosure of the identity of the sponsoring agency, and oversight. JAMA Network. Slowly, the architecture of protection was built, yet too late for many. Imagine being told you were volunteering for one thing, and actually you were enlisted in something altogether different. Families devastated by a cure withheld, by radiation injected, by bacteria released in the name of security. They carry not only scars, but questions. Why them, and why did no one intervene? The very idea that the deeper we look into history, the more we realize that truth was never just hidden. It was buried beneath layers of silence, fear, and justification. These secret experiments weren't accidents. They were choices, made by people who believed that progress required sacrifice. But the question that still echoes today is, whose sacrifice? For decades, ordinary citizens were used as test subjects in the name of science, security, and survival. They were never told the risks, never given a choice, never even remembered by name. Their pain was classified, their stories erased. But every test left behind a human cost that can't be measured in data or reports. Families destroyed, lives shortened, trust shattered. The men and women who were exposed to radiation, injected with diseases, or manipulated through drugs didn't volunteer for history. They were written into it without consent. Their stories remind us that the pursuit of knowledge can easily become a weapon when ethics are forgotten. The darkest chapters of human experimentation aren't just about what happened, but why it was allowed to happen. Because when secrecy meets power, accountability disappears. Today, we like to believe that such experiments could never happen again. We trust that modern ethics boards and laws protect us. But the shadow of the past still lingers. Classified research continues, technology grows faster than regulation, and new forms of surveillance and data testing quietly evolve. The question remains, have we truly learned from the past, or have we just changed the methods? Every whistleblower, every declassified document, every confession years too late, each one pulls back the curtain a little more. What was once hidden begins to take shape. And in that light we see not just betrayal, but warning. The true legacy of these secret experiments is not the science they produced, but the moral boundaries they broke. As we close this story, remember, transparency is not just a demand, it's a responsibility. Ethics are not obstacles to discovery, they are the foundation that keeps discovery human. The victims of these experiments cannot speak for themselves anymore, but their silence speaks volumes. It reminds us that truth delayed is justice denied, and history only heals when it's told honestly. So, when you hear the phrase, "for national security," remember the cost that phrase once carried. Remember the people who were sacrificed in the shadows of progress. And remember that freedom isn't just about protecting borders, it's about protecting lives, even from those in power. Because the real experiment is still ongoing. The experiment of whether humanity can learn from its own mistakes. And the outcome of that experiment depends on us.